So now the Yakuza in today are, there's been a more of a really strong line that's been drawn between legitimate society and the Yakuza, the underworld. They no longer are this kind of like imperceptible part of like the fabric of society.
Right.
Now they're criminals.
Now they're criminals. So, every now and then, though, that connection surfaced. So the prime minister after Abe was Prime Minister Suga. So Suga had this sort of illegal cherry blossom viewing party used with political funds. And there's a picture of him taken with the Yakuza. Clearly Yakuza. Clearly they know each other. And the response of the administration, I think it was like 2019, was to make a cabinet proclamation that we are not able to define what is a Yakuza. So there's no problem, which drove the police crazy. Because if you're saying, if you tell the police we can't define what is a Yakuza, we can't define what are antisocial forces, then how do you enforce these laws that you have in place? So politicians still get caught with the Yakuza, but it's a death knell these days. Right. It's not acceptable.
I see. So what are they doing now? Now that their numbers are down, they're kind of painted with this criminal brush. What are they doing what's the big racket now?
Fraud. It's often called special fraud. It used to be called wire me the money fraud. Originally it was called, it's kind of like ori sagi, which is like, it's me, mom. You call up an old person and you pretend to be their grandson or whatever, because Japanese families are very disconnected. And you're like, it's me. I'm like, I'm in deep trouble. I need some money. And like, oh, Sonny, like, where should I send the money? And like, I'll send my friend to come by. I got in a car wreck with the Yakuza. I have to pay him money right now, or I'm in big trouble. And that has become a huge industry.
Wow.
So very elaborate frauds, like, with 3 or 4 people, you have someone will say, call you up and say, like, this is Mr. Tanaka at Sumitomo Bank. Your credit, your bank account has been violated. And your card information has been stolen. We're going to send someone from the bank to give you a new card immediately. Please don't use your card. Maybe before you can even call the police, there'll be a second call. Like, this is Officer so-and-so. Have you noticed any, suspicious transactions with your bank card? We've been contacted by the bank. Maybe the cop will come talk to you. Then the bank employee will show up. You'll give them your bank card. They'll say, like, you need to change your code number or your anshobango.
PIN number.
Sorry. Yeah. Sometimes the English doesn't come to mind. Yeah. You need to change your PIN number. What was the PIN number? And you tell them, and they clean out your entire bank account.
Wow. And so they send someone around dressed like a real cop.
Yeah, a real cop.
And a real banker.
Banker. This kind of elaborate fraud is the bulk of their business. Shaking people down used to be, the number one crime that you associated with Yakuza. Now it's fraud.
Yeah.
Many different kinds of fraud. And they've also started setting up shop in Cambodia. And in Cambodia, they have lured people there, promising them jobs in tourism or, promising them jobs at resorts, and basically hold them prisoner and make them do call services, cyber scams, like invest in Bitcoin.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's kind of like what the CJNG, the Nuevo Jalisco Cartel, they do that with migrants who are coming through from Central America, trying to make it to the U.S., and they can't, so they're sloshing around in Mexico. And what they'll do is they'll recruit them through these, Facebook posts or however to, hey, come to Cabo, come to Puerto Vallarta. And then they kidnap them and they make them work in these call centers that are for scamming.
Yeah. Cyber scamming. So I think
why Cambodia specifically? Has that been the turf?
Well, Cambodia is a lawless country.
I see.
And the Cambodian police are really underfunded. And my favorite ex-Yakuza, Goro Taramasa, set up his own empire in Cambodia. It's kind of like,
the diaspora.
Paving the way.
Right. That was going to be my next question, is what kind of international reach do they have? And have these new laws kind of made some of these gangsters in Japan say, yeah, it's time to like search for new markets where we can operate more freely?
There has been diaspora in the sense that they have set up shop in Singapore for front companies and more sort of high finance investment schemes, like everything from bid rigging to pump and dump schemes with stocks. Singapore has been very friendly to the Yakuza because Singapore doesn't care what you do there as long as you aren't bothering the Singaporeans.
Right.
I mean, I think that's a very interesting secret that Singapore is the Switzerland of Asia. They will turn a blind eye to everything, and they will not cooperate with authorities. They're not going to share information with. It used to be Hong Kong used to be like that, but it's Singapore. So Singapore,
as long as you don't jaywalk, or
as long as you don't jaywalk,
do anything to affect the quality of life.
As long as you're not chewing gum, as long as you're chewing gum on their side of the street, they're fine.
Right.
Singapore has been friendly. The Philippines has always been friendly to the Yakuza. Guam. And then in Japan, basically the ones that remain are the people that aren't your mom and pop Yakuza. When I say mom and pop Yakuza, for example, Sugawara Gumi, because I hired an ex-Yakuza boss to be my bodyguard for a couple of years. So I know his operations really well. And actually, he had his father, who used to be a banker, run the operations for him, which was pretty funny when the police raided his place because, his father labeled everything like extortion, protection money, like loan sharking.
Yeah.
But the mom and pop operation is, I own this turf that is like 4 kilometers long. So every restaurant pays me $200 a month. Every arcade pays me $200 a month. The sex shop that's running, like semi-legal, maybe illegal, because they're allowing vaginal penetration. Almost every sex thing every sexual act in Japan can be purchased, but actual, male-female vaginal penetration sold as a service is illegal.
I see. So whorehouses are illegal, but there's other kind of like strip clubs in the U.S. State by state, they're regulated differently.
Well, this is an old show, so I can advertise, and you can pay for, and you're not making any crime. Anal sex, oral sex, fraudage, all of those things, totally legal.
Wait, anal's cool, but
anal's cool,
but old school, missionary.
If you want to,
P&V,
now
that's taboo. That's illegal.
That is illegal. That is illegal. If you want to, if you're going to offer a service where someone comes and pays for having sex with a female, as the brothel owner or the pimp, you can be arrested. Now, because the original purpose of the anti-prostitution laws was to make sure that women couldn't be sold into sexual slavery, sort of like anti-human trafficking laws, the female and the customer are committing illegal acts, but they can't be arrested and they can't go to jail. So unless the woman is openly soliciting on the street, she hasn't committed a crime. So it's either the pimp or the brothel that can be. And now the exception to this is, and this is a zoning issue, there used to be these establishments that were first called Turkish baths, where you're paying money to go into the establishment and be bathed and sexually massaged by the woman. But then if you go over to the room next door and you hit it off, that's free love. And if you decide to have sex, that is not prostitution because that is not included in the price of entry.
Like we're in love, actually.
We're in love.
So
it's free love, GUI. Yeah. That is legal. But those establishments that have that license, no new establishments are being licensed. So there's maybe 1,000 of those left in Japan. But those are the only places where you can actually legally offer that as a service.
So those must certainly be paying up to the Yakuza, right? Because they operate in such a gray area.
Some are run directly by the Yakuza, and some are paying them off. And I think they're paying them off for intelligence and also for unruly customers. Like what do you have a customer who isn't going to wear a condom or is rough with the girls? You can't call the police because even though technically it's legal, the police aren't going to come help you because they look at you as scumbags.
Yeah.
So you pay protection money to the Yakuza so that when something goes wrong, you know who to call. Or increasingly, they're photographing themselves having sex with the girls, and the girls don't want to be all over the internet. So, you need to lay down the law and tell them like that's not acceptable.
Yeah, we blur things out here in Japanese porn.
We blur things out, or not only do we blur things out, it's just like you don't want the girl doesn't want her face on the internet. In that fan magazine there, right? There are descriptions. There's a section where, the reporter for this magazine goes to sex club A, where maybe it's nurse themed. He gives a review of the service and the quality of the girls. And sometimes they have the face of the woman in there. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's blurred out. Now that is legal. Actual pornography that you can see vividly is still technically illegal to sell in Japan.
I read that the Yakuza is like luring women from the Philippines and, other kind of struggling, poor Asian nations, bringing them to Japan and then keeping them there against their will. Is that true?
That would be like 10 years ago. That would be like 2007, 2008.
That was almost 20 years ago.
20 years ago. I worked for the State Department on a study of that. And the State Department was like, this was the Bush administration. Man, I feel old. The Bush administration was like, hey, Japan, you're our ally and you don't do anything about human trafficking. You're letting it run amok. We're going to rank you up there with North Korea. And as they were pressuring them, I got hired sort of with a sort of plausible deniability loop to do a report on how it was working in Japan, which politicians were being paid to look the other way, what was the system, where the girls were coming in from immigration, why Japan wasn't doing a better job. As a matter of fact, Prime Minister Abe gave a speech. Well, he wasn't prime minister at the time. He gave a speech to what was a human trafficking lobby at the Liberal Democratic Party headquarters in 2007, because it was big business. But once Japan was like, okay, you know what, this is an embarrassment, and they put actual laws on the books and they enforced them with severe punishments, international trafficking radically diminished.
I see.
Because it's about money.
Of course.
And the Yakuza, one of the reasons, the secrets of their success is they take very good care of their people. So if you commit a crime for the organization, right, it's part of their enterprise. You're doing it, as part of your duty or your tithe to the organization. When you go to jail, they will take care of your family, your wife and your kids, give them a stipend, and your mistress. So that, if you start having all these people go to jail for human trafficking for a couple of years, that's a huge drain on the money.
Right, of course. So they see that the heat's coming down in a certain sector and they say, forget it, we're not getting involved in this. We're moving over to fraud. We're moving over to higher white collar crime.
But here is the horrible sort of like, wow, we didn't see this coming effect of getting rid of international trafficking. So for years I worked with a group called Lighthouse, was originally Polaris Project Japan, that helped trafficking victims. What we started to see around 2009 is that domestic trafficking. So they would get these young girls to come to host clubs. And a host club is really hard to explain. You can watch Tokyo Vice, the TV series, and get a good sense of what it is, but it's kind of like a social club where these young, attractive Japanese men kind of look very effeminate, wine and dine the women and get them to buy expensive champagne and compliment them. And these girls get kind of addicted to this attention at these fancy dancy clubs with these, well-dressed guys who are, pouring their whiskey and lighting their cigarettes. And sometimes they get so deeply into debt that the host introduces them to a sex club where they can pay off their debts. And often the sex club is owned by the same people that own the host club.
And these are men getting selling out their bodies.
These are men. No, they're not even getting sex. They are just giving the boyfriend experience to these women.
Right. So and they go broke, and so then the
women go broke, and then
how do the women go broke if the women are paying the men?
The women are paying the men. That's a host club.
I love this.
This is a host club.
Yeah, okay.
The women are paying the men.
All right. America needs to learn from this.
So
charge the ladies. I love this.
But in the circle of vice there, often half of those women who are going to the host clubs are hostesses who are working late, whining, like getting men to buy them drinks and give them, giving them the girlfriend experience. It's not sex. It's like,
right.
Johnny, you're so sweet. You're so smart. Your podcast is doing so well. Let me pour you another drink. Wouldn't you like the Johnny Walker? Wow. How about the Johnny Walker Blue?
Why do you think they need to do that? Why do women, is there such a shortage of available men that women feel like they have to go to these clubs and pay to get compliments? And
I think that a lot of the women who end up at these things they're very young, so they're not very wise, and they're easily charmed, and they want to be loved, and they haven't had a real boyfriend because, most of Japanese people spend all their time in high school studying to get into college. If they don't get into college, they're kind of like already on the loser track. And the hostesses are kind of looked down upon by general society, right? So, it doesn't involve sex; it involves providing companionship. But a lot of guys find that kind of distasteful. I don't want my girlfriend to be a hostess, but the hosts treat them with respect and dignity and compliment them. And so, they get really into it, and they're very, very good at manipulating these women, their feelings. Sometimes they have sob stories like, yeah, I'm working as a host to pay for my mother's surgery. And, so they feel like they're, supporting a good cause. They get into debt and then introduced to a sex shop and are working off their debt and basically a sexual slave.
Wow.
Now, after the police prosecuted a couple of those cases as human trafficking cases, which I remember at the time was really unusual because we always thought human trafficking is like, foreign woman with a passport, not, dumb, well, I don't want to say dumb, deceived young Japanese girl. So the host clubs are like, okay, this is too easily identifiable. So now it's like a three-party system, like a sort of a three-body scam. The host brings in the girl, gets her hooked on the host club, racks up a huge debt. Then he introduces her to a loan shark. The loan shark loans her the money and then suggests that she pay the money back by working at a sex shop, which he then introduced her.
Right.
So there's not a direct connection to the host club and the sex club, because then that could be sex trafficking.
Right.
Maybe all the ingredients there of making it a human trafficking case.
And the Yakuza are probably the ones loaning out that money, probably own the sex shop or taking a piece of the sex shop.
Yeah. Are they own the building where the host clubs are in? Like, you guys pay us percentage of what you earn.
So this guy, real quick, this guy is a boss of one of the.
Yeah, he is the number 2 in the Yamaguchi-gumi. He is Takayama.
Wow,
Kiyoshi.
he looks bad. He's up, huh?
He's up. No one knows why his eye is drooping. There's rumor that he was got in a sword fight. I don't know. There's been so many different theories.
Wouldn't that be classically Japanese if he'd gotten in a sword fight?
So, in a country with really strict gun laws, right? In 2021, there were 1 gun death in all of Japan. That's 122 million people. Because it's so onerous to have a gun or to fire it or to have a gun with a bullet that matches the caliber of the gun that even the Yakuza don't want to use guns. So, in a weird way, you have seen the revival of the sword as a method of gang violence.
Fascinating.
Because you're not going to get 20 years to 30 years for using a sword to slice someone up. And you probably won't even kill them.
What are the punishments? You see that in London a lot too. London, England, there's a lot of knife crime, a lot of knife murders. Even in New York, and I think that's kind of a phenomena of the surveillance state is that you can't get away with shooting somebody in a big city anymore. I mean, there's cops everywhere. They have shot spotters that can, as soon as a bullet goes off, it immediately alerts, the closest precinct or whatever. But what about that? Or do the Yakuza? I know they try to avoid murder, as most mobs now do, I think. But when do they resort to that? Can you name like a recent kind of famous Yakuza hit?
I mean, the biggest hit was like around 2007 or so. Was mayor of Nagasaki was interfering with public works, was blocking Yakuza from getting contracts with public works, and he was gunned down in front of a bunch of people. One low-level Yakuza boss said that he was mad that the potholes in his neighborhood hadn't been fixed. But everyone understood that was a message like, try and cut us out of public works and you will die.
So that's not recent at all. So
No.
Is there anything?
No, I mean, you're running a business and it's become very clear that you have to pay the damages for what your people do. So kill a civilian, that's $1 million. The cost of getting away with murder is about $1.3 million. And nobody wants to pay that.
Right. Now, if the Yakuza are so diminished on their level of violence, why are people still scared of them?
Well, I mean, they do kill each other, right? You don't want to be in the crossfire. This gang war between the Yamaguchi-gumi, which split into 2 factions and 3 factions, now several different factions, that's been going on since August 27, 2015. Miraculously, not a single civilian has been killed, but there have been a lot of Yakuza on Yakuza violence, and including a guy, the classic, like getting gunned down in the barber shop or hit by a car.
Now, do they solve these gang hits?
Yeah, they solve the gang hits often.
So do they, what do you get for a murder in Japan?
For a murder is, if you have to kill, I think, more than 2 people to get the death penalty. Japan has a death penalty. Mukichoeki means like undetermined, undetermined amount of imprisonment. It's usually like 30 years, anywhere between 20 to 30 years. You can get parole.
And what are Japanese prisons like?
Awful. They don't have, some of them don't have air conditioning, don't have heat. You get to exercise. You get to shower like 3 times a week in the summer and then twice in the winter. I guess the one thing that is good about Japanese prisons is that they're so regulated and you're so monitored that you don't have to worry about getting sodomized by
or getting killed by another inmate.
Yeah,
there's no gangbanging going on.
Yeah, I listened to your podcast on life in prison. Like, no, that's not going on. There's no gangbanging. The guards are in complete control.
Right.
There was a case a couple years ago in Nagoya prison where the guards are particularly rough, where they had an unruly prisoner and they stuffed a hose up his ass, and then the water pressure caused the internal organs to rupture and he died.
Oh, man, I knew a guy from my frat. Same thing.
Yeah, there was a off subject, but there was a spate of compressed air deaths in Japan. A couple years ago, I wrote it up for Asia Times. Guys working at like at a garage, and one of them took the compressed air thing and sort of, it's like, as a joke that kids in Japan do this, is they sort of make this like little gun with their hands, and then they grow up and they jab someone in the butt and they say kancho, which means enema. It's just like a little thing little Japanese kids do. So, they're just around with their buddy, and he's like, took the compressed air hose and like jabbed him in the ass. But the air can go through cloth enough that it ruptured his organs and he died. Okay,
so the Yakuza definitely fear prison. It doesn't sound like it's a thing where, in Mexico, if you can pay, you're living like almost like it's a resort.
Some prisons. When Scott Shitsunobu went to Nagoya prison on the gun charges, for like a year, he was kind of living the high life, and then somebody leaked it out, and then he was, treated just as badly as everybody else. Yeah, the prisons are really bad. You have to sleep with the lights on. Yeah. You have to work. It's like manual labor. You have to do manual labor. So I don't think you want to be in Japanese prison. But in the old days, right, when, because there was a time when Japan had this very sort of lackadaisical attitude towards Yakuza. As this cop I know once said to me, what crime is it when a Yakuza kills another crime? What crime is it when a Yakuza kills another Yakuza? And I was like, manslaughter. And he's like, no, destruction of property. So, that's how the police felt. As long as you're killing other Yakuza, we don't care. You shoot someone in a gang war, maybe 5 years in jail. Now, they realize that allowing that to sort of be a special category is a bad idea. So if you kill another Yakuza, you're going to get the same sentence as you killed a civilian. If you fire a gun at someone, now they're always going to up the charges to attempted murder, which will get you a much bigger penalty.
Right.